Stop wasting your energy on people who don't value you. Watch till the end to uncover the 8 things that make you a simp without even realizing it, and learn how to take back your power. Drop a comment with your city where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe for life-changing insights every week. So many people walk through life believing that if they just give enough, sacrifice enough, or bend themselves enough for someone else, they will finally be loved, respected, or appreciated. And here's the thing, there's a deep psychological trap in that. When you constantly prioritize someone else's happiness over your own, you start losing touch with your own identity. You begin to confuse submission with love and effort with value. It's a subtle but dangerous mindset, and the more you fall into it, the more you diminish your own sense of worth. Think about it. When you're always saying yes, always accommodating, always putting someone else's needs above your own, what message are you sending? Not that you're kind or selfless or generous, although yes, those are positive traits. No, the message you're sending is that your needs don't matter, that your time, energy, and dreams are disposable. And the human psyche at its core craves respect and recognition. When you consistently deny yourself that respect, when you minimize your own importance, you start teaching people how to treat you. I want you to reflect for a moment on how this shows up in real life. Maybe it's staying late for someone who never acknowledges your effort. Maybe it's constantly agreeing to plans you don't want to attend just to avoid conflict. Maybe it's bending your opinions, your passions, or even your style to fit what someone else supposedly desires. Over time, these small compromises accumulate, and before you know it, the person you've been over pleasing isn't even noticing who you are anymore. They're just enjoying the version of yourself you've created to appease them. There's a philosophical lens we can look at here. Aristotle talked about the concept of eudaimonia, flourishing, a life of virtue, fulfillment, and self-actualization. You can't achieve that if you're constantly living in someone else's shadow. When your actions are dictated by the desire to please others, you aren't living authentically. You're living reactively, and that's a recipe for long-term dissatisfaction. Every time you suppress your own needs for the sake of someone else, you're stealing from your own potential. You're teaching yourself that your happiness is secondary, and that is not how a fulfilled, empowered life is built. Now, I'm not saying kindness, generosity, or compromise are bad. Far from it. Those are human virtues, and they are essential for connection. But there is a crucial difference between giving freely from a place of strength and giving compulsively from a place of fear, insecurity, or desperation. The first comes from confidence, the second comes from a lack of self-respect. And it's the second that leads people down the path of becoming a simp without even realizing it. They confuse selflessness with self-erasure. And here's the truth. People notice energy, authentic energy. They notice confidence, self-respect, and the ability to hold your own space in a relationship, whether it's romantic, professional, or social. When you overplease, you're giving away your energy for free, and often to people who don't even see its value. They take it as a given. They don't respect the boundaries you don't enforce. They don't value the sacrifices you make because you've trained them not to. And that's why overpleasing is so dangerous. It's invisible at first, but it erodes your life quietly, piece by piece. Let's bring this into a practical frame. Start observing your patterns. Are you constantly checking in with someone, waiting for approval, or altering your behavior to make them happy? Do you feel a nagging emptiness even when you're doing the right thing for them? That's your intuition signaling that you're overstepping the limits of healthy self-respect. That's your mind telling you that you're giving too much of yourself, expecting too little in return, and training the world to undervalue you. Breaking this cycle requires courage. It requires the willingness to say no without guilt, to set boundaries that might initially provoke discomfort or even anger, to reclaim the right to your own time, attention, and energy. It means understanding that self-respect is not negotiable and that authentic love from yourself or anyone else cannot flourish without it. Every act of over-pleasing chips away at your identity. Every act of self-respect reinforces it. You cannot build a life of influence, passion, or deep connection by being a shadow of what you could be. So here's the bottom line. Over-pleasing and losing yourself is not love. It's not kindness. It's a compromise of your soul for temporary approval. The strongest, most magnetic people are those who give freely, yes, but from a place of abundance, not desperation. They know their worth. They honor their boundaries, and they understand that the right people will appreciate them for who they are, not for what they give away. Take this insight with you. Never undervalue yourself for anyone. The moment you start giving less of yourself to please others and more of yourself to honor who you truly are, you reclaim control of your life. You reclaim your power, and that is where real respect, love, and fulfillment begin. Let's talk about a trap that so many fall into without even realizing it, the constant need for validation. It's subtle, it's sneaky, and yet it controls more lives than we care to admit. When you rely on compliments, likes, attention, or approval to feel worthy, you're handing over the keys to your self-esteem to someone else. You're essentially saying, I cannot value myself unless you do it for me. And here's the kicker, no one else is obligated to meet that expectation. When you live like this, your happiness becomes conditional, and conditional happiness is never sustainable. Consider how this plays out in everyday interactions. Maybe it's posting a photo and anxiously refreshing to see who liked it. Maybe it's sending a message and overanalyzing every response. Maybe it's complimenting someone incessantly in the hope that they will finally notice or reciprocate. These behaviors are not innocent. They are signals of a mind that has tied its own worth to external recognition. And the deeper you fall into this pattern, the more dependent you become on other people's perception of you, which is inherently unstable and fleeting. Psychologically, this taps into a very basic human drive, the desire to be seen, to be acknowledged, to matter. There's nothing wrong with wanting connection. It's fundamental to our nature. But when this desire becomes the anchor of your self-esteem, it transforms from a healthy instinct into a vulnerability. Instead of standing strong in your own value, you are constantly seeking permission to feel good about yourself. And what happens when that permission is delayed, denied, or withdrawn? You feel anxious, insecure, and inadequate. You feel small. There's a philosophical perspective here that is worth considering. Existential thinkers like Sartre and Kierkegaard emphasize the importance of self-authenticity. True freedom comes when you stop seeking the approval of others and start validating yourself from within. Every act of dependency on external validation is a surrender of your autonomy. You become reactive, not proactive. You allow the world to define your worth instead of defining it for yourself. And the irony is that people who constantly seek validation are often invisible in the way they truly wish to be seen. They may get attention, yes, but it's attention based on their performance, their compliance, their pleasing behavior, not on who they actually are at their core. Let's break this down practically. When you notice yourself bending over backwards for approval, ask yourself why. Is it because you genuinely enjoy doing this? Or is it because you hope to be accepted, liked, or loved in return? If it's the latter, you are giving your power away. You are trading your energy and your authenticity for fleeting recognition that will never satisfy your deeper need for self-worth. And make no mistake, this pattern has long-term consequences. It erodes confidence, fosters anxiety, and keeps you trapped in cycles of people pleasing and self-doubt. The danger is that seeking approval can be addictive. Every compliment or positive response triggers a small dopamine hit in your brain, reinforcing the behavior. You begin to chase these external rewards compulsively, much like someone chasing a high that never lasts. But happiness and confidence built on external validation are inherently unstable. They are brittle foundations that crumble under the weight of real life. And the more brittle your foundation, the more you'll struggle to maintain meaningful relationships or achieve your goals because your sense of worth is always at the mercy of someone else. Breaking free requires awareness and discipline. It starts with noticing when your actions are motivated by a need for approval rather than genuine intention. Start asking yourself, am I doing this because it aligns with my values or because I want someone else to think well of me? When you make choices from a place of internal validation, from a place of self-respect, you reclaim power over your life. You stop performing and you start living authentically. And here's the beautiful paradox. When you validate yourself, the world begins to notice naturally. People are drawn to confidence and self-assuredness. They respect and respond to authenticity far more than to calculated attempts to impress. Remember, confidence is not arrogance. Confidence is quiet, grounded, and rooted in self-awareness. It does not seek applause. It does not bend to the whims of others' opinions. It simply is. And the more you cultivate that, the less you need to chase validation. You will give freely because you have plenty within yourself to give. You will love freely because you are already complete. And the people who truly belong in your life will recognize you for who you are, not for how much you bend to meet their expectations. So here's the takeaway. Stop seeking approval like it's oxygen. Stop relying on others to tell you that you're enough. Your value is inherent, not negotiated. Every moment you spend chasing someone else's recognition is a moment you could spend strengthening your own self-respect, pursuing your goals, and becoming the person you were meant to be. The liberation that comes from internal validation is profound. It's the difference between living a life dictated by fear and living a life guided by purpose and clarity. You don't need anyone's permission to be worthy. You don't need anyone else's applause to feel whole. When you stop seeking validation externally and start cultivating it internally, you free yourself from a lifetime of conditional happiness. And that freedom, that is what allows you to live powerfully, to love authentically, and to step into a life where you are respected, admired, and ultimately unstoppable. One of the most common pitfalls that turns well-intentioned people into what others label as a simp is the consistent ignoring of personal boundaries. This isn't about the dramatic, obvious moments where someone blatantly disrespects you. No, this is far subtler. It's the quiet compromises, the small concessions you make because you fear conflict, rejection, or the loss of someone's approval. It starts with tiny acts allowing someone to interrupt your schedule, tolerate inconsiderate behavior, or absorb emotional labor that should not be yours alone. Over time, these small concessions add up, shaping a pattern where others take your generosity for granted. Psychologically, this happens because many of us are wired to avoid discomfort. We fear the backlash of saying no. We fear losing connection. We convince ourselves that boundaries might push people away or make us seem selfish. But here's the truth: boundaries are not a barrier to connection, they are the foundation of it. They communicate value, both your value and the value of the relationship. When you consistently allow others to overstep, you signal that your time, energy, and emotions are expendable. People take what is given without gratitude because gratitude is never demanded. It is inspired by respect, and respect grows from clear boundaries. Imagine a scenario you've probably seen countless times. You constantly make yourself available for someone, accommodating their needs, often rearranging your own priorities. Meanwhile, they rarely check in on your well-being, rarely reciprocate the effort, rarely acknowledge your sacrifices. You feel drained, overlooked, maybe even frustrated, yet you push on because you fear the alternative, being labeled as difficult, or selfish, or worse, being alone. This is a pattern that erodes self-esteem invisibly but relentlessly. The danger isn't always in being taken advantage of. The danger is in allowing yourself to believe that being taken advantage of is acceptable. Philosophically, think of it like the idea of personal sovereignty. Every individual has the right, the responsibility to own their space, their energy, their emotional bandwidth. To ignore boundaries is to abdicate sovereignty over your own life. It is to live reactively, shaped by the demands and expectations of others, rather than proactively, guided by your own principles and desires. And the irony is that people who fail to assert boundaries often end up resenting those they most care about, because the imbalance in the relationship fosters unspoken tension and unfulfilled needs. The more you give without limits, the less respect you often receive in return. There's a psychological principle at play here called reciprocity. Humans naturally respond to respect with respect, generosity with generosity. But reciprocity requires clarity. It requires boundaries. Without them, your efforts are invisible, treated as default rather than as gifts. You don't want to live a life where people take for granted your time, your kindness, or your emotional labor. And yet, that's exactly what happens when you fail to assert boundaries. You train people to expect more from you than they give in return, and the cycle only deepens with time. Breaking this pattern requires conscious effort. Start by noticing the areas where you consistently overextend yourself. Observe where discomfort or frustration arises. Those moments are signals. They are your intuition telling you that your limits are being crossed. Then practice saying no, not as a form of punishment or defiance, but as a declaration of self-respect. Saying no is not rejection, it is affirmation. It tells the world that your energy is finite, your time is valuable, and your presence has worth that cannot be exploited. It is also critical to understand that setting boundaries will trigger reactions. Some people will resist, some may even withdraw. That's not a reflection of your value, It's a reflection of their comfort with your new standard. You cannot control how others respond, but you can control your willingness to honor yourself. The more consistently you enforce your boundaries, the stronger your sense of self-respect becomes, and the more people who truly deserve your time and energy will gravitate toward you. Boundaries filter out those who take without giving and attract those who value authenticity and mutual respect. Let's be clear, boundaries are not walls. They are guides. They are the invisible lines that allow relationships to flourish without compromising your integrity. They prevent resentment, burnout, and the slow erosion of self-worth. They teach others how to treat you and remind you that you deserve the same respect you give. Every act of boundary setting reinforces the principle that you are not disposable, that your needs are legitimate, and that your life is yours to govern. When you stop ignoring boundaries and start enforcing them, a profound shift occurs. You reclaim your time, your energy, and your sense of self. You no longer feel the constant pressure to please, to accommodate, to sacrifice unnecessarily. Instead, you operate from a place of strength and intentionality. People respond differently when they sense that your presence is not automatic, that your attention and care are earned, not taken for granted. And paradoxically, the more you protect yourself, the more genuine connection you invite into your life. So here's the takeaway: ignoring boundaries is not humility, it's self-erasure. Being taken for granted is not love, it's a reflection of your failure to honor yourself first. Your power, your respect, and your fulfillment come from knowing your limits and enforcing them without guilt. The moment you start protecting your space, demanding reciprocity, and honoring your own needs, you transform the way the world interacts with you. You step into a life where your presence is valued, your energy respected, and your relationships deeply fulfilling. Remember this: boundaries are not a compromise. They are a declaration. They are a statement that you matter, that your life matters, and that the respect you demand for yourself is non-negotiable. When you embrace this, you don't just stop being taken for granted. You start commanding the respect, admiration, and authentic connection you've always deserved. If you want, I can now combine all three key points into a single, polished, full-length speech with smooth transitions ready for delivery, keeping the Jessica Au Pair motivational tone intact.